Let go. You're silly. Morning, guys. I am up early to pick a bunch of peppers. It is no lie that this is an amazing pepper year. I just harvested a ton of serranos and jalapenos. I want to say not even a week ago because I have a few batches of sriracha still going, and I'm getting a ton this morning. My plan is to pickle some peppers today. Depending on how much more of these I have left, I might do another batch of sriracha. And then I have various things I need to do. I harvested some pumpkins and some squash. I think I'm gonna go ahead and freeze dry those ones to make a pumpkin powder. I loved this last year. I did a freeze-dried pumpkin powder out of Puree, and I loved tossing it into all different kinds of recipes. I also need to try to get some of my onions chopped up. I want to chop up some of those and freeze them. And then, let's see, I had a few other things on my list. What were they? Oh, I need to freeze some tomatoes. I'm obviously not getting a lot of tomatoes this year, but I do have some on my counter. I'm just gonna go ahead and freeze because I just don't have enough to really do anything with. And I have not made my way to the farmer's market quite yet. I was looking at farmers markets actually last night to see who does organic regenerative practices, and I found a few. And of course, it's the farmer's market that's like the furthest away from me. So I might go there on Saturday. We'll see, but I'm gonna go ahead and freeze these anyway. There's only enough right now that if I were to freeze these, I could probably just use them for like a tomato soup or something, but not my tomato year. It's definitely a pepper year though. When I showed my pepper harvest the other day, I got a lot of questions on how are my pepper plants so full and how am I getting so many peppers? So I stopped pruning for the most part. I will say I take off some of the very, very bottom leaves, like maybe the last 6 inches. Other than that, I just let the plants go. I don't top them. I don't worry about cutting off any flowers if they're starting to bloom inside. Those were various things I heard so many gardeners talk about for years, so I would try it. And last year was the year I just stopped doing that because I was like, you know what? Let's see what happens. And I have had some of my best pepper years the last few years. I was really, really hoping to have a good tomato year this year. And with how the weather's gone, I really think it would have been a good tomato year. But if you're new here and you don't know, I had a neighbor spray for poison ivy and it took out literally almost all but 2 of my tomato plants. So I have more tomatoes planted at the moment, but I honestly am not thinking they're going to produce in time. We'll see. We have a good amount of flowers and stuff, and I'm starting to see some fruit set, but even once fruit sets and gets big enough, you're still looking at about 30 days because it takes a while for them to get to full size, and then it takes about another 20 or 30 days after that for them to get some color. So we'll see what I get. Honestly, if I only get green tomatoes and they don't ripen, I won't be mad about it because I tried a green tomato recipe last year for salsa verde. I do have some tomatillos that are starting to produce, so I might just do salsa verde with tomatillos. But you can use a green tomato just like you would like an apple for a pie. And I will say, when I say the green tomato pie was pretty much identical, if you would have told me that wasn't an apple pie, I would have probably thought you were lying. That's how good it was. So I want to do more things with that. I would love to play around with some like toaster strudel type recipes and stuff with that because it was that good that I was so impressed with the green tomatoes that if I just get green tomatoes for the rest of the season, again, I don't think I'm going to be too disappointed. But this looks like it's going to be it for all the red peppers. I'm gonna leave a lot of the green ones at the moment. This here should be plenty to do some pickled peppers today. I just want to do one batch of pickled peppers. I have I think I counted 6 jars still from last year, and I want to do just a whole hot variety. Last year I did a lot of banana peppers, and this year I didn't plant any banana peppers because I really didn't need to. Oh, I also have a few bell peppers I need to grab, and then I actually might grab the rest of my carrots this morning too. I just have a handful of them left, and I probably need to go ahead and get those harvested. I think with these bell peppers, I still have, I think, 2 in the fridge I harvested the other day. I think I'm gonna actually slice these up and then also slice up some of my onions and then vacuum seal them and throw them into the freezer so I could have some really quick stir fry veggies. That sounds like a great plan. That's one thing I actually buy during the winter months, is just pre-frozen chopped up peppers in the freezer section, just for that really quick convenience of stir fry veggies. It makes such a difference. So that was one thing I really wanted to do this year. You'll see, look at these guys. Beautiful. The one bell pepper performing amazing for me this year is the Elsa. This Elsa is a yellow variety, and it has put on so many peppers, and I am loving it. I am definitely growing that again next year for sure. Those are really pretty. I don't know who planted Morning Glory, but it's always popping up every single year. It wasn't me. Ooh, that's probably the best one of the morning. Check that out. I actually had more carrots than I thought, so I might end up chopping these up, blanching them, and freezing them as well, just to have them prepped and ready for chicken noodle soup because it's almost soup season. Okay, here's this morning's little harvest. We have our carrots, all of our serranos. There's a few red jalapenos in there, bell peppers, and snacking peppers. I'm gonna let my cats out for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we are going to get to work in the kitchen. Is it outside time, buddy? Get that one. How about that one? Good boy. And that one? Yum. All right, so here is everything we are going to knock out today. I think I'm going to start with freezing a few of these things first. That way I can feel like I accomplished something and knock out a lot of this quickly. So I'm gonna start with the tomatoes. I think this will probably take me the least amount of time out of anything. I'm simply going to wash these, core them, and stick them into freezer bags that I'm going to vacuum seal. Very quick and simple. And then after that, I think I'm going to move on to all the bell peppers and onions. I'm not going to blanch these either. I'm just going to slice them up. I might dice up some of the onions as well, because I'm going to slice the bell peppers and the onions, put those together in a mix for the stir fry like I was saying, and then I'm going to dice up some more of the onions and freeze them. And then at that point, I think I will move on to carrots, and I'm going to actually blanch the carrots. I just find that carrots do a lot better when you blanch them. Carrots and green beans, broccoli are the 3 main things I will actually take the time to blanch. So I will blanch the carrots. First I will wash them, I will peel them, I will chop them, blanch them. Then at that point, I will get these and I will freeze these. So we're gonna work on all the freezing first. And then I think I will move on to the squashes. That way I can get these in the oven and they can cook. So then that way I can take out all the flesh, and then we will toss these into the freeze dryer. And while these are probably in the oven, I might start on some of these serranos here. The plan for the serranos is to pickle them. So that is the game plan. I expect me to be in this kitchen for a handful of hours. Every time I open this cabinet, it just smells like sriracha. I have 2 batches of sriracha currently going, and these will be done in just a few days. We're getting really, really close on them. They smell so good. I am doing a video on these. I'm not sure if this will be out before this video, but either way, I will link it or keep your eyes peeled for it. I love making sriracha. It's probably one of my absolute favorite things for this time of year. But with tomatoes, they're really easy to freeze and just use later on. I can use this for tomato soup, or if I get enough, which I really don't expect me to get enough tomatoes to do pasta sauce. So I am going to vacuum seal. Forgot what the word was. If you just have freezer bags, one thing that works really, really well is if you take a straw and you suck out as much air as possible. This really just helps any type of long-term storage and, again, freezer burn. So we'll do like that. Another tip I have for preventing freezer burn is if you have any type of deep freezer, put your stuff in the deep freezer. Don't keep it in your everyday freezer that you're opening and closing all the time, because that fluctuation in temperature can also affect things like that. I am simply going to core them and stick them into the bag, and that is it. When a tomato freezes and then thaws out, that skin will be really easy to peel. And when I typically freeze tomatoes, I'm also using them for tomato sauce, and I have a press that actually takes off all of the skins and the seeds, which is really, really helpful. It's literally one of my favorite tools. Since I'm not doing a lot of preserving with tomatoes this year, I will link the one video I did last year where I think I preserved 100 pounds of tomatoes in that 1 week. And I do tomato sauce, I do crushed tomatoes, and I do salsa in that video. And those are the three things I really use all of my tomatoes for. I will say crushed tomatoes have definitely became probably my #1 favorite outside of salsa. If I didn't have a tomato press, I would definitely just make crushed tomatoes. I use crushed tomatoes way more often than I use my tomato sauce now. It makes the best base for pizza, spaghetti, pastas, you name it. It is honestly my favorite. I'm officially down to my last few jars of crushed tomatoes. So that's another thing. I really hope to get my hands on some tomatoes. The thing is a lot of the people who grow tomatoes around here, at least for the last few years, they don't do paste tomatoes. They only do heirloom or cherry tomatoes. And I really only like to can with paste. It really makes a difference in how much liquid is there. So I don't know. We'll see if I can find any or not. But I would highly suggest giving a little try at some crushed tomatoes. They're really easy. It's a very beginner-friendly canning recipe. Same with the pickled peppers I'm going to do. Pickled peppers are probably one of the easiest and fastest things to can. They are so quick after you get all of your peppers washed and cleaned up and chopped and all that jazz. And just like that, we have our first thing done, and that was why I said I was going to start with tomatoes. All right, so we are going to put this on a gentle pressure. We don't want them just to be completely sucked out. And just press the button. Ta-da! Really like my vacuum sealer. The only complaint I have about this is this tray inside here doesn't lift up or remove. So when I do something wet like tomatoes, I do need to immediately go through and wipe it out or it gets sticky. All right, I'm moving on to my bell peppers. I am just going to slice these thin, and then I will move on to the onions and slice the amount I think would go well with the peppers, and then dice the rest of those. I haven't talked too much about the onions this year. They did really well. I had a really good onion harvest. And the thing is even though a lot of them did really well and are just fine, I did have an issue with some of them molding again. We had one of the wettest Junes we've had since the 1920s. And when I say a lot of rain, I think we had over 13 inches of rain that month. And that is when the onions are starting to die back. I did end up creating a block with the onions. It's just been really weird. The last few years have been really weird because I've never had issues with onions. I've grown this onion, I want to say for 3 or 4 years. It's the Calibra, and it's a storage variety that I had clear storage into January one year. But then the last few years, last year I had almost my entire harvest mold out during the curing process. This year, I want to say I probably had about 15. So it wasn't a complete loss. I am a little sad that I did have some issues again, and that is one reason why I am just going ahead and chopping some up and freezing them, just so if I were to have any long-term storage problems, I'm not going to have an issue. At this point, my onions are ready to be brought in. I have a few that still need a little bit more time with curing. I've cut a few of them open, and you can tell that they're just not fully cured yet. But I did want to mention that I have had a slight issue. I have not had the issue I had last year, so that is good. I really think the wind block I created helped a lot because we also had a really, really windy spring, and then we just had a really wet spring into summer. So I think those drier years are the years that I never had an issue with onions, to be honest. So I'm thinking that that worked in my favor, and the wet seasons are a little bit trickier. I can only process a few at a time. 1 or 2 onions doesn't bother me, but once I get into like 3 or 4, they always bother me. I'm just going to place as much as I typically use for fajita dinner night whenever I do this. Another thing outside of fajitas that I like to use this for is noodle stir fries, like Asian noodle teriyaki stir fry. That is like literally one of the best. And then just like the carrots I plan to do, just having diced onion like this in the freezer makes it really quick and easy to prep a chicken noodle soup, especially if you have broth in the basement that you've canned. To do about a cup and a half whenever I do something chopped like this, because that's typically how much I like to use in a recipe. The one thing I like to do when I have any type of veggie like this, when I am vacuum sealing it, I like to kind of press down, make it a bit flat. This just helps when you are stacking things in your freezer. So I'll kind of line it up, put the lid down, and then I'll hold it up and kind of make sure everything's kind of flat. Now I'm just going to add the date. That way, if I do more of these, which I do plan to do both, I will just use up the ones I did first. All right, moving on. We are going to get the pumpkin and squash into the oven. And while this is being cooked for about 40-45 minutes, we are going to work on the carrots. So I have the carrots currently just sitting in some water to help clean them a little bit before I really clean them. I already have my oven preheated, and then I have water here ready for the carrots. So this should all go fairly quickly, and then we have peppers after that. So with the pumpkins and the squashes here, I am going to cut them open, get as much of the pulp and the seeds out as possible, lay them flat on a cookie sheet, and then they'll be baked at 350 for about 45 minutes. I have my bowl here with the pepper scraps, and the pumpkin is gonna go right into that as well, any of the seeds and the pulp. And then I'm also going to do the same with the greens from the carrots, and all that will go to my chickens also with any extra pepper stuff over here. So I actually freeze dried and dried out a bunch of the carrot tops last year for a parsley. So if you didn't know, you can use carrot tops for parsley. You can also use them to make a pesto. I have so much of it because I also freeze dried parsley last year that I don't need any of it. So it's just gonna go into a big bowl for my chickens, and we'll give that to them at the end of the day for a little treat. So this year I grew a pumpkin called a Long Island cheese pumpkin. This is actually vine borer resistant, and I had really, really good luck with it. Obviously, we didn't have any issues with vine borer. I have had to keep up pretty heavily on the squash bugs this year when it comes to the squash and also this pumpkin here. The squash variety I have is a variety called the honey nut, which is also vine borer resistant. So if you had any issues at all with vine borer this year, I highly suggest both of these varieties. I am loving this Long Island cheese pumpkin. It's so fun. It's almost like one of those Cinderella type pumpkins, and everyone says it makes a really great pie. I also have 2 more of these currently growing on the vine. The other one is almost ready and it is massive. So I'm thinking I might make a pie with that. Today I am simply going to make a puree out of the pumpkin and the squash. So if you didn't know, a lot of the pumpkin puree that you buy from the store is actually the bigger honey nut varieties. It's actually a squash and not a pumpkin. And these pretty much taste identical to them. I've grown these for a few years now. So we're just gonna mix it all together. Last year, I freeze dried a bunch of puree and I loved it so much. I was able to make icings with the pumpkin. I was able to reconstitute it and use it for pies. This year, I really want to make ice cream with it. So I am just loving the freeze-dried pumpkin puree. I will show you guys what it looks like at the end because this will probably take clear until tomorrow. So I will show you guys. I still have 1 jar of it left, and it was one of my favorite things to have on hand during the fall season. I really love using my freeze dryer for all different kinds of powders and things like that where I might not get to all of this all at once, but I can freeze dry it and just reconstitute it really easy. Look how beautiful that color is in the center of these. So I want to say I have probably like 5 more of these left on the vine as well. I will say, I think Harvest Right is having a sale right now. So if you have looked at freeze dryers, I think they're like $600-700 off at the moment. I am an affiliate for them. I will link the link down below if you're interested in checking them out. I will say they are definitely one of those things that are more of an investment, but it was one of the very last things I got when it came to preserving. And now that I've used it for a few years, I will say that would have probably been one of the first things I would have buy outside of my pressure canner, all of my stuff for water bath canning, because all that stuff adds up. My pressure canner alone was $400 to $500. All of the jars, everything else you need for canning, it all just adds up. And the freeze dryer, you can do so much more with it, and it's just very convenient. For example, I just freeze dried a ton of serranos this week because I can reconstitute those in the middle of winter and make hot sauce with them. Like, there's so many cool things you can do that I initially didn't think you could do with a freeze dryer. I have freeze dried eggs. I've been able to make quiche when my chickens aren't laying in the dead of winter, things like that. So I will have that linked if you're interested. I keep telling like my sister and stuff, like she has 3 kids and canning takes a lot of time, patience, and a lot of precise things. With a freeze dryer, you can simply prep it the way you would prep it for any type of recipe, toss it into the freeze dryer, and then when it's done, it will keep it at temp to where you can get to it at your convenience, which is honestly just so nice. And these are gonna, ooh, that is heavy. I'm gonna put this in for 45 minutes. I'm gonna keep an eye on it. I'm sure I'll be able to smell it. When you do pumpkin or squash like this in the oven, that skin peels off really easy. So don't the time to cut off all the skin is just gonna be a waste of time. Moving on to the carrots. Take off these greens. And what I'm going to do is I'm gonna wash these really well, and then I am actually going to peel them, and then I will chop them, and then I'm going to toss them into boiling water for 2 minutes and then directly into an ice bath. And then at that point, I like to run them through my salad spinner. So when you blanch like that, it cooks it for a few minutes and then it stops the cooking when you throw it into the ice bath. You could also compost all of this, which, if you guys know, I have been really slacking in the compost department. I actually ripped out my compost area last spring, and I have not put a new one in. It was the game plan to do one this summer. We have not got around to it. I've told you guys it's been a very busy summer over here. So hopefully next year I will have another compost pile. But until then, the chickens will enjoy a nice little treat today. So when it comes to a bigger carrot like this, I like to actually cut them in half, followed by another cut, so technically in fourths. And then I like to just dice them at that point. I find that to be a really good sized carrot when I am eating soup, instead of just a really big, like circular carrot. All right, here's our carrots. All right, so here's my boiling water. I'm going to toss this in for 2 minutes, and then I have my ice bath here. I had to use a loaf pan. I'm running out of bigger containers that I can do stuff with. Using the salad spinner is one of my favorite hacks when I am doing any type of freezing, especially broccoli. Broccoli is a big one. Just gets all this extra water off, helping prevent against any freezer burn. Yeah, look at all that. What I'm going to do is place this in a single layer on a cookie sheet, and we're gonna go run downstairs, throw this in my extra freezer, let this pre-freeze, and we will turn on the freeze dryer while we're down there, because we're at 18 minutes up here. I will probably let this cool off a little bit. Actually, I'll still turn on the freeze dryer though, and I'll go ahead and get it prepped, but I will actually let that cool down. Let's see if my stand-up has room. We recently just got a half cow in the big one. Ooh, see, and I have all this suet. I got this at the butcher, and I'm gonna make my own tallow. I am so excited about it. Let's see, I might be able to move some of this actually. I also buy a bunch of whole chickens from a friend. I learned how to butcher last summer, which was really cool. Let's see, will this fit? Perfect. But I'm so excited about the half cow. I have so much ground beef. I had like, what, 120 something pounds of just ground beef. Ugh, I love having freezers stocked. All right, freeze dryer. Let's close this lid. And then let's flick that on, and then we flick this on. Turn this little knob. And then all you do is press start. It's really that simple. I'm gonna go ahead and start prepping peppers. So this is the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. I highly suggest this book if you're trying to get into canning. Some of my favorite recipes are in here. So I am doing pickled hot peppers today, but I am doing serranos and maybe a few jalapenos depending on how much. As long as you use the same quantity of peppers, you have to use the exact same amount. You can change out the peppers you have on hand and change up if you want it to be more spicy or less spicy. This is one of the things I do with salsa all the time. I'll make a few more extra spicy batches and I'll do some mild batches, but follow the exact same recipe. You can't change the quantity of the peppers. That is one thing you just have to know. You have to do the exact amount of peppers that's stated in this recipe here. So I am looking at needing 11 cups. I need, 11 cups of peppers total. We'll see how much I have here. I should have enough. If I need to go run back outside and grab a few more peppers, I will. This will roughly make about 5 pints. At that point, all I do is make a pickling solution after I wash and I cut these peppers into slices. Really simple prep, really simple canning recipe. Highly suggest. If you have this book, or if you're gonna get this book, it's on page 316. So I'm gonna wash some peppers and cut up some peppers. I will probably wear gloves for this because the serranos are pretty hot. These serranos are beautiful, and this is honestly probably the best serrano here I have ever had. All right, we got 11 cups of peppers here, and we did not go through all of them. So I have to figure out something to do with those probably tomorrow. I'm not gonna get to those today, but our pumpkin and squash are officially cooled off. So let's get this pureed and into the freezer. I'm just going to scoop everything into a large mason jar here. And then I'm gonna take my immersion blender and just make sure there's no like big clumps or anything, and spread it out onto my freeze dryer trays. One thing is you actually can't can pumpkin puree. You can can squash in chunks and then just blend them later. But another reason why I just love my freeze dryer. Now I'm just going to evenly try to spread this out amongst 5 trays. There might not be 5 trays completely full, but when it comes to freeze drying, it works a lot more efficient if you use all 5 trays versus dumping it onto 3. It's just because of the sensors and stuff like that. All right, let's get this downstairs. And then we press continue. And that is it. I have my big stock pot here with 6 jars. This recipe technically calls for 5, but I always like to have a backup. And I'm gonna fill this with some hot water, get it on the stove. I'm also going to put some white vinegar in here. This will help sterilize and also keep your jars clear when they process. All right, we're gonna get this onto the stove here and get these jars hot while we get our brine going. All right, so for the brine, I already measured out 6 cups of vinegar, white vinegar 5%. Then I have 2 cups of water here. And then I have 3 cloves of garlic. The garlic does not go into the end product. It just goes in to help infuse the vinegar flavor. So all you do is you peel it and you crush it and toss it in, so it's easy to remove later on. Now we're just playing the waiting game until everything gets hot and ready. I had the perfect amount for 1.5 cups for 3 of them. So with pickled hot peppers, I actually take out all the jars at once and pack all the jars at the same time. Typically, I don't do that when it comes to canning, but with having the hot liquid and everything, it's gonna be just fine. Find it a lot easier to make sure everything is packed in there well. So I'm gonna remove all these jars here. I'm gonna get my peppers out, and we are going to pack these pretty well with a 1/2 inch headspace, and then we will fill with the brine solution, debubble, and see if we need to add any more solution at that point. I'm gonna lightly just throw in peppers and then move on to the next jar, and then I'll pack it down with my hand. All right, I'm gonna ladle in my solution, and then I'm gonna go through, debubble everything, and see if I need to add anything else. So I'm gonna take my debubbling tool here and go through and get out any extra bubbles that might be present throughout the peppers. As you can see, some of that liquid is definitely falling down, so that's where we adjust the liquid at that point. Let's see where we're at. And yes, I am using a sewing tool. I need a little bit more in this guy. That should be close. A little bit more. All right. That looks to be about perfect. I'm gonna go through all the other ones now and do the same thing. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna take a paper towel, dip it in a little bit of vinegar, and I'm gonna wipe the rims to make sure that there's nothing else possibly left on the rims. This will help everything seal correctly. I would like to mention, I forgot to tell you guys, I did wash my rings. See how it's orange and everything. I washed my rings and I rinsed off my lids that I will be using as well. All right, now I'm gonna add my lid, get my ring, place it on fingertip tight. You don't wanna go too tight with these because then it could make the lid buckle. And now I'm gonna take my jar tongs and we're gonna place these back into the water here. You do want to make sure there's about an inch of water over top of the jars when you are doing any type of water bath canning. We're going to get the lid on this and let this come up to a rolling boil. So that means it's boiling like crazy. And then we'll process for 15 minutes. In the meantime, while we wait for that to go up to a boil, this is what the freeze-dried pumpkin looks like. It's just a pumpkin powder. I did cinnamon, did I say cinnamon rolls? Did cinnamon rolls and icing with it last year. Ooh, I should make some type of pumpkin cookie. I want to do pumpkin ice cream, pumpkin muffins. I'm so excited. But yeah, that's what it looks like. It's just a pumpkin powder once it gets done. It probably won't be done, my guess is, until the afternoon tomorrow. A lot of things take roughly about 20-ish hours to fully freeze dry. All right, I'm gonna set the timer for about 15 minutes here. And then once it's done, I will let it sit for another 5. What's up, honey? I know, I'm ready to be done too. All right, processing time is done. We're gonna turn that off and remove the lid. And we're gonna let everything sit in here for another 5 minutes. Well, it was a long morning into early afternoon, but it feels so good to have gotten all of that done. I got all of the scraps here. Let's give it to the girls. All right, I'm gonna dump it. Here you go, have fun. Thank you guys all so much for joining me today. I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye.